Okay, let's begin. Welcome to Canberra SharePoint User Group for October 2017. Thank you very much for coming, all of you. Full room, I see. And yay! What we'll do today, we will go through some SharePoint news, things that happened since last month, and then we'll do a presentation by one of our sponsors, which we will thank in the end. So as I said, we'll start with news. Our sponsor today is Quizcom, and we will learn about the new Forms app. By the way, my name is Ishai Sagi. I'm from a local company called Accelerated Design. If you want to find more about us, we're at xd.com.au, and we are resellers of Quizcom here in Australia, and we can help you with any questions or quotes or anything that you need. Today's presentation is about Quizcom Forms. This is an app, a new app that was released a couple of months ago to the Office 365 online, basically SharePoint Online App Store, and you can get it from the App Store on your tenant wherever you are. You can get a trial version, I'm pretty sure. And recently, this vendor has migrated the code. They have a data center in Australia, so your performance will be a lot better than what we'll see today, because I'm still using the Canadian servers because that's where all my demos are. But if you have a tenant in Australia, logging into the site, all your code, all the script that relates to this app will be on Australian servers, and you'll have much better speed and performance. So basically, I'm making excuses in advance for how slow everything will be, because I'm connecting to Canada. Quizcom is a Canadian company, founded in 2005. They have more than 50 different products for on-premises and online. So everything that we're going to see today is also available as an on-premise solution. However, the app is massively different from the on-premise solution in user interface, and also some new features that they included in the app but haven't released yet for on-premises. So what you're going to, so even if you've seen my presentation about Quizcom Forms in the past, what you've seen in the past is about the on-premises solution, and today you're going to see something new that's only available for the online SharePoint Online users. Yes?
So you mentioned different bits of appearance, but is the functionality similar?
The functionality is very, very similar, and even enhanced. So you will see things that if you are familiar with the on-premises version, you will see things that are not available, and I will highlight them, some of them, as we go along. But so the functionality is the same. The user interface, as you will see, is much more streamlined and makes a lot more sense, and I'll get to what we're talking about, and everyone will understand. So the aim of this product that I'm showing you, I'm focusing on only one of their products, called the Quizcom Forms app. It's actually a collection of apps that you can buy separately, but I'm going to show you that collection, the bundle that you can get, that we put under the heading Quizcom Forms. The idea is to effortlessly create powerful and dynamic forms. No technical skills required. That's the main thing. You can see here in the slide, you can see some example of forms that look massively different than regular SharePoint forms, something that you cannot do with regular SharePoint forms, and you are able to do with Quizcom Forms. Existing form tools, let's talk about the different options that you currently have, especially in SharePoint. Let's focus on SharePoint Online. What form tools do you have on SharePoint Online at the moment? You have out-of-box SharePoint lists, which are very limited. You can create a column, you can set some default settings on out-of-box settings on the column, and that's it. You can't say this column should not be available to those users, or should be available only on some conditions, or maybe should be read-only but not editable. And again, put conditions on that. You can't put a lot of smarts on it, such as a complex validation or complex choosing of default values. And there's also a lot of restriction on what kind of information that form supports. And the design of the form is basically a big, massive no-no. Don't change the design. Use the out-of-box design. If you want to, yes, you can go into SharePoint Designer, but here we're leaking from business users designing form to developers having to go into XSL and HTML and all kind of complex technologies. The other alternative that Microsoft gives us to say, you want to edit the form, do it in InfoPath. So Microsoft are telling us InfoPath is a tool that can you can upload an InfoPath form and tell the SharePoint list when someone clicks on new, open the InfoPath form in new mode, or when someone clicks on an existing form, open the InfoPath form in edit mode. Now, the problem with InfoPath is that it's not really made for business users. It's again very much a developer tool, not only in how to use it to build a form. It's not as simple as drag and drop into the canvas, although Microsoft pitched it originally as that. And as you can tell, by the very fact that Microsoft said we're not investing in InfoPath anymore, after 2020 it's not supported, and who knows if it's going to be supported by future versions of SharePoint. Microsoft have already realized their mistake. InfoPath was very underutilized, and when it was utilized by developers, not business users. Now, there was a question before we started the presentation about other third-party tools. So I'm not really going to compare to other third-party tools. I'm just going to ask the question, are they something that business users can be very easily trained to use? And what I'm going to aim to show you today is how easy it is to use by business users. The other question that you need to ask yourself when you're comparing to other third-party vendors is the data being saved in SharePoint? What happens when I uninstall the solution? Do I have easy access to my data? And the answer with QuizCon Forms is, QuizCon Forms sits on top of a SharePoint list. Everything that you do in QuizCon Form means you are actually building a SharePoint list, and we'll see that in the demo when I'm going to start with a SharePoint list, and I'm going to create columns for that SharePoint list. And then I'm going to use QuizCon Forms to manipulate how it looks. But at the end of the day, when someone goes and saves, it saves an item to the SharePoint list and saves the metadata in the columns. If you uninstall QuizCon Forms, you still have the list. You just don't have all the modifications that QuizCon adds to make it more user-friendly and more complex, and all the additions that I'm going to show you today. But you still have the data. Users are still able to access it, query it, download, export, do whatever you want. And that's the main question when you're talking about other form technologies. You have to evaluate that. So instead of waiting for the tech guys to come and do things, we want to empower our power users. We're going to give them a business user tool that is 100% SharePoint native. That means we're only using out-of-box SharePoint lists. And the bottom line, lower cost of ownership. So if the idea is to turn your existing SharePoint forms, and that's another thing that a lot of our other third-party tools don't do, you can actually take, if you already created a SharePoint list, instead of having to redevelop everything in a third-party technology, you can just plug in QuizCon Forms and say, I want to enhance the existing list. You don't have to start from scratch. And you just enhance it by turning it into smart context sensitive. So what I'm going to show you in the demo, I'm going to show you how we can dynamically show and hide fields. So basically, based on certain conditions, either who the user is, or maybe even based on other fields, the values of other fields, I'm going to show or hide certain fields, something you can't do in SharePoint. And with my experience with other third-party tools or InfoPath, is very hard to do for a regular user to configure that. I'm going to show you how to add field groups, or tabs, if you will. I'm going to show you, well, if we have time, I don't think we'll have time today, but I'm going to talk about cascading fields, where, for example, you choose a continent, and then it shows you the list of countries in that continent. You choose a country, it shows you the list of cities. You choose a city, and voila, you chose it. And that's, again, something that's very much missing in SharePoint and very hard to configure. Multi-row forms. So the perfect example for multi-row forms is, let's say if we want one form for travel expenses, and in that form we want the user to specify, these are all the expenses I had. So we want a control in the form to say, I spent $50 on taxi, add row. I also spent $25 on a business meal. Add row, I spent another $50 on taxi back. So basically, within one form, we want the user to add more and more information. And this tool will allow us to do it. Again, easy for the business user to configure.
So is that kind of a internal sort of many to one?
Yes,
form?
exactly. And remember what I said earlier, 100% SharePoint native. You don't lose the information and you don't lose the connection. It's actually going to be saved in the SharePoint list. If you uninstall QuizConforms, that connection is still there. You will just need to do the query about the connection yourself. Yep. So it's a beautiful thing, and I hope to be able to get it. All the form settings that I'm going to show you today, it's very easy to just export them. So you've done a great job. You think, perfect, this is my app. You know what? I'm going to need those settings somewhere else. You can just export those settings. You can import them later. You can even consider it a save. Like I'm exporting it so that if I mess it up later, I can just revert. Yeah.
So does that also mean that by saving those settings, you're effectively building a form template,
yes,
without having to actually have a template?
Exactly. So if I'm saving a setting, that is essentially me creating an app. So I'm using an app to create an app. Mm-hmm. I configure the list with specific columns. I can save that list as a template. Also export my settings from of the QuizConforms app, and those two together, you can then recreate what you've done elsewhere, very, very easily. Dynamic field validation. So we can say, if that field is equal to yes, the next field cannot be blank. Stuff like that. We fully support custom fields. So if you're a developer and you developed your own custom fields, or if you purchased custom fields that came from another vendor, and they are supported. QuizCom custom fields are supported in some ways. Some of them are supported even more to allow more integration. Show and hide fields in views. So this is something really great, and I think this is one of the things that are not available on the on-premises version, where if you say on a certain condition, for example, that user should, that group of users should not be seeing this field, it doesn't only hide it from the form itself, it also hides it from the view when the user loads the view. So even if the user says, I want to see that field, and they go and create their own personal view and say, I want to see that field, it won't display to them. Something that's not mentioned in this demo, and it's actually a feature I asked this vendor to add, and based on my reaction, they added that. In the previous version, when it wasn't hidden, and users could see fields that they're not supposed to in a list, they could go into the edit this list, the quick edit view, and change the values of the fields that they're not supposed to have access to just through the views. What was implemented before is basically a rollback. If it detected that a user should not have seen the field and still managed to edit the field, it rolls it back. So even if you have very advanced users who know coding and stuff like that, you remember last month's presentation, I showed you all kind of REST services that allow, using a URL, we can actually update list items if we just know the names of the field and we just put it in the URL. QuizConforms will actually catch those advanced users and say, hang on, you're not supposed to change that field, we'll roll it back. And finally, custom actions. Basically, custom actions is a way to give users buttons that will perform certain actions on the form in one click, instead of asking them, The main example, the perfect example, is the SharePoint out-of-box task list. In an out-of-box task list, to complete a task, you actually have to do several options. You have to open the task, set the task percentage to 100%, and say that the task status is closed, and maybe you may want to even configure date closed is you want to put today maybe. So you have to set several things before you can click save and it closes the task. With QuizCon forms, it's very easy to say, you know what, add a button to the top of the task list that says close task, and when that's clicked, set all these values and close the task. So we make it easier for the user. So now the question of the demo and what do we want to show in demo. This is basically what I have two options here, and I'll let you choose from the two options. The two apps that I can develop are those. One is an app of processing sales leads, which is the form that you see in front of you, where this is just a regular SharePoint list where we have title, accounts, account contacts, lead source, published on site, lead type, products, and we want to convert that into something that's actually useful, that's actually user-friendly with all the rules, and I have a full demo on that. The other option, if it sounds more intriguing to you, is basically a travel register, travel request register, where people ask for, hey, I want to travel on that date, and someone else approves it, it's basically the same principle, just the different scenarios. Does anyone have a preference? Yeah?
Travel for me.
Yeah, travel? Okay, let's do it on travel. So I'm still going to refer back to this presentation, to the slides in the presentation to remind me what next thing I should be demoing. But we will take it step by step and we'll build a travel register from scratch. I figured that travel might be more interesting because it's more relevant to the type of organizations we work with, while this is more sales oriented. Okay, so let's talk about a travel form. By the way, this is where we would have ended up if we had gone through the lead form, and I'll show you where we're going to end up with our travel request. So this is our aim. Our aim is to get to a form that shows one thing to the user when they start the process, saying, okay, well, what's the title of your request, where you want to travel to, where from, where to, what's the travel date, what's the travel return date, do you have a preferred hotel chain, any special culinary requirements, yes or no, contact phone number. So you can see it's a very simple form, and we already can see some graphical interface changes between the regular SharePoint form and this form. For example, we can actually have two columns here. Some fields will use the two columns, some fields will take the entire width. Also, you may have noticed, do you have any special culinary requirements? What's the point of this? Because I'm asking them yes, no, not letting them specify what they are. Or am I? Because if the user ticks it, then we are asking them what are the culinary requirements, and we basically also validate that this cannot be empty as long as that's ticked. So you can already see this is a dynamic form. This has some very nice user interface. For example, putting the description of the fields, instead of under the fields, we can put the description as a pop-up. So instead of overloading the user with information, we're just telling the user, here, click on that, you get a pop-up. This is not a field description. This is actually something very cool that I'll show you, and it's one of the biggest differences. But notice that it looks like it's tabs, but there's only one tab. What's the point of that? Well, the point is there's a difference in what the user sees when they log on to create one, and what the next user sees when they open it. They may see more tabs depending on who they are, because if they are managers, they'll have the manager approval. and we can see who approved it. Or if I am a manager and I edit the item, I get to approve it myself. The travel team sees yet more information that they can fill in. That's our aim. Our aim is to create a truly dynamic form using nothing but our existing SharePoint knowledge and a small app. So we're not going to have time to do the full travel request log that I did. So I'm going to take a lot of shortcuts. I'm going to start by doing travel Canberra office. No, I'll keep it in navigation so we can go back to it quickly. So this is a generic list, nothing but title. By the way, we do have to stay in classic SharePoint for now, because Microsoft, if you're not familiar with classic versus modern, Microsoft on Office 365 on SharePoint Online have the modern experience, and the way to customize the modern experience has just been released recently. So it will take a while for vendors to update their apps to support it. So for now, we have to stay in the classic experience that we all know and love from SharePoint. That it's been like this for years. So when I create a new item, it's a regular SharePoint form. Title. We need some columns, so I'll quickly create some columns. Maybe you can help me. For travel register, I need a to and from, and I need date, so travel date, and I'll do date and time. Say that it's required. Okay. Return date, date and time. Required. Okay. And that's because this is Canberra office, so I only need destination. And we'll leave that as a single line. You know what? I do want to show you how it works with choices. So we'll do choices, and we'll say Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, and that will be enough. So these are the only places that our employees can go to. And let's start. Let's add approving manager. So this is a person, and oh, come on. And for the travel team, so that's a signifier of travel book, and this can be this can be the example of approval or status. You can compare that to a task status. Let's also do the culinary requirements things. Do you have any requirements, which is also yes or no, with the default to no. And let's do, what are they?
Is there any way to capture the trip ID, like every person once they register to travel?
So,
is there any way to capture the trip ID, the trip whatever the traveler who is traveling, the person from Canberra to Sydney and Sydney to Canberra? So before that, if they come to know the trip number, they can enter based on trip number. They can enter all the allowances.
Yeah. Okay. So, so what were the expenses during the trip?
Yeah. Expenses belongs to one trip ID rather than entering all the.
So if we have time during the presentation, I'll show that. I'm keeping that for later because it's you see here this option, manage repeating rows. That's what will do that. and we will, if we have time, we'll get into that. It's just a bit complex in the time that we have left. So, if I'm opening it, you can see a regular SharePoint list with a regular form. However, it's showing me I'm the user who's requesting travel. I shouldn't be setting the approving manager, and I shouldn't be saying, it's booked. I should only be setting the title, travel date, return date, destination, and these fields. So we need to do, based on who the user is, we need to show different fields. So let's start with that. That will be our first demo. In the ribbon, once you install the Quiz Conforms app, you have a button for Quiz Conforms. This is actually, this will take us to a page. Okay, this will take us to a page that shows us all the configuration options that Quiz Conforms apps have. So depending on the apps you purchased, you'll see more or less here. You can see that there's a professional edition that has some more, enterprise edition that has even more complex stuff. But we're starting with the basics, dynamic column permissions. So we're essentially going to say who's going to be able to set which column. And also, it's not just permissions, it's also conditions. So if you're familiar with the on-premises version, this will look nothing like it. So this is one big difference. This is the streamlined user interface that makes it easier for business users to say, okay, I want to now configure a column. So you start by selecting a column. I'm going to select the column. Let's start with approving manager. And I'm going to say, I want a new rule for approving manager. So I'm going to set up a rule. And I'm going to say, apply permissions to, and I'm going to say, hide it. I'm going to leave the apply permission to empty. And that means it's gonna hide it from everyone. I'm going to add a new rule. Oh, sorry. I think I should have typed everyone. Yeah, I forgot. Let me start from scratch. Yeah, so I select approving manager. I say new rule. I need to choose which of the four pieces of SharePoint out-of-box forms this rule should apply to. New item, edit item, view item, and list views. So you can see here that I can configure different rules for different forms. So I can say in the new item form, no conditions, just hide it. Apply. Now, for speed's sake, I'm going to open another tab with the list so we can see what difference has it made, the setting that I just applied. If I click new item, there's no manager field. So I basically said, don't show it in new item. Okay? So that's a very simple one. What else don't we want to show in a new item? We don't want to show travel booked. New rule. In new item, hide. Apply. So travel booked, which currently shows in new item. When I refresh, doesn't show. Okay, so that's step number one. We're hiding or displaying stuff, or even if you noticed in the permission type, we can either show, hide, or disable. So disable means it's going to show, but it's not going to be available. Yeah. Okay, so these are two rules that we've created. You can see the tools that we have listed here. And again, how easy is it for business users to understand what's going on in the list? It says, hide approving manager in new item form. Hide travel booked in new item form. What's our next step? Our next step is, we do want to show them in the edit item form. Oh, I should create an item so I can edit it. So I'm asking for travel. SharePoint conference in Sydney, and I'm traveling this Friday, and I'm returning Sunday, okay, and Sydney, and I don't have any culinary requirements, so I can save. Okay. Now, if I go to edit the item, travel booked and approving manager are available. So now comes our next challenge. We don't want the user, the regular user who requested travel, to now edit those fields. Those are not for the end user to do. These are for specific teams. We have the managers, so the people who can approve travel, and we have the travel team whose job it is, once it's approved, to book. So let's go back to our rules and say, okay, let's start with travel book. I'm going to say there's, let me just create a new rule. And I'm going to say in edit form, I want to disable. So I want the users to see if the travel is booked or not in the edit form, if they go and edit. But I don't want them to be able to change it. So I want to disable it if current user, current value is not in, and I have a group, I think, called travel team. Come on, authenticate. Travel team. Okay, so basically this, and I can get rid of this, I think, yeah. So I'm basically saying don't disable travel booked. Right now the user can tick and untick. Now I don't remember if my current user is a member of the travel team. We'll see that in a sec. Yes, that's saved, yes. Did it save? Yeah, disable. Okay, so let's go and remove the current user from the travel team. So it's just a SharePoint group that I created for the demo called travel team. And here's my current user, Quizcom support. I'll remove the user from group, which means that if I go to Canberra, travel Canberra office, and I try to edit, checkbox is disabled. I can't click on it. You can see that it's a gray, different shade of gray, a lighter shade of gray. Okay, we can do the same thing for approving manager, but with a different rule set. So I can say new rule. I want to, in edit item form, disable, you know what, let's do hide on the condition that current user, current value is not in travel approving managers, which is another SharePoint group. Okay. So you can see here that it says that disable, it actually writes in plain English all the rules on travel booked. I think I accidentally deleted a rule earlier, which is to hide it from the new form. So I'll just return it, hide it from the new form, that's it. So you can see I have on every column that I'm setting rules on, it tells me the rules in English. Disable in edit form when current user is not in travel team. Hide in edit form when current user is not in approving managers. And hide in new item form.
Ishai, those Those group names, were they links? They were in bright blue.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, sorry, it's not links, but it's bright blue because it's a selected value. When you see here, when I look at my list of rules, the one that I'm currently editing is marked, is highlighted as currently edited. The one that I'm not currently editing has a edit one, and you can see here that as I go to between them, basically the blue means that I will be able to change here. Okay, so that was step number 1. Which shows us that based on who the user is, based on either in their group, or you can even select a specific user, you can show, hide, disable, form different forms in different conditions. The next thing I want to do is, do you have any culinary requirements? I want to set the culinary requirements to only be displayed if this is ticked. So, very, very simple. Any business user can do that. I select the culinary requirements field, and I say I want to have a rule for the new form, also for the edit form. A rule that will apply to 2 forms. And I'm going to say hide this when, and here I'm going to find the do you have any culinary requirements question. And I say when it equals to no. So when the answer to this question is no, so the user did not tick the box, hide it. If it's yes, show it. I'm going to apply. Going to refresh. Culinary requirements should disappear. Yep, disappeared. But it's a dynamic form. That means when I tick it, the rules are evaluated and the rule found, okay, I no longer have to hide it. If I untick it, it disappears again.
And that culinary requirements field is currently a single line of text, but it could be a choice field, gluten-free, etc., etc.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. You can make it. It doesn't matter what the field type is. It will disappear or appear based on the rules.
So for example, if it was a choice field with say 6 or 7 values and you were tossing up between using a drop down or radio button,
yep.
By hiding it when it's not required, you don't take up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for example, let's see if we can do that. That's actually a curious thing I never tried. I'm not sure it will work. Let's try destination and say let's do a new rule on destination for both new item and edit item. And say hide it when title is equal to empty, is empty. Apply. I'm not sure if this scenario is supported, but based on empty. So title is not empty. We see the destination. Title is empty. It's gone. So in your scenario, if that choice field would be displayed as radio buttons, you're saving a lot of room on the form until the user has done the action that needs to that causes it to be displayed.
I think you can get a lot more complex information on the form without overwhelming the user.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly the point that we're trying to achieve. Okay, get rid of that. So that's dynamically showing and hiding fields. That's the scenario we would have done if we were doing leads. Multi-tab, multi-column form. So now let's make the form a bit more user-friendly. I'll go back to our form. So if I go back to form settings, if you don't remember how to do that, it was simple. It's from the ribbon. I clicked Quiz Conforms, and it got to here. Notice this option, field group tabs. Click on that, And again, business user level easy. Again, the servers are in Canada for my demo environment. So, first of all, before we get into tabs, let's just look at the options that we have regardless of tabs or not. Field caption location near the field or above the field. So right now, if I'm in a new item, the internet just went slow.
You must be working on my server.
Ah.
This is my day.
This is the SharePoint Online server. Here we go.
My top premises.
So, right now, you can see the field title and the field right next to it. If I say, no, I want it above, and click apply, we suddenly created a form that may make a lot more sense to some users in some scenarios, especially if we're going into tabs and multi-columns. When we do multi-columns, it doesn't look good when the caption is next to the field instead of above it. Okay, field description location below the field is the SharePoint default. Click the info icon is what I showed you earlier, which means it will show this kind of icon next to the field that will contain a pop-up with the description. So it's that easy to make that change. Number of fields per row default. Notice the word default because I can set it and say, okay, I want 2 fields per row, and because it's the default, it will apply to everything in my form. So my entire form, instead of being 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it will now refresh, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see there is something here in default, and we have 2 that didn't take the default. We'll see how we can fix that. Display groups as tabs or accordion. Accordion means that you have collapsible sections instead of tabs. We'll leave it in tabs for now. Hide group if all fields are invisible. So remember that we earlier were able to set to hide fields based on certain conditions. This basically means, if I leave that ticked, that if all the fields based on the rules are not going to be displayed, I'm not going to have a tab that where the user tabs to that's empty. So it basically will hide the tab if the tab is empty. And I can do all fields group, so I can add a tab that shows everything, basically the same thing as if I don't have tabs. Now it's my turn to create groups. So I can do a group saying if you request. Notice that I can specify for this tab how many columns will be in that tab, and right now it's empty. It won't have any columns. So I need to say, okay, I'm going to add a row, and I'm going to add another row, and in this row I'm going to select title because I want the title to be at the top. You know what? I actually don't want title, but I'll show you what I'm going to do. First of all, I'm going to change the column span of title to take the entire width. So title takes the entire thing. It doesn't share. It doesn't have 2 columns. That one is stands alone. But instead of title, notice that I can choose any of the columns that we have created. But we also have 2 things there that are not columns. HTML elements, horizontal line and text cell. This is something that users keep asking me again and again and again, and I'm sure you have the same scenario. If I select text cell, it then allows me to just freely type text, or if I want, HTML. So I can do, for example, H1, this is welcome to a travel form, close H1. Or I can just use the text editor here But I like the fact that we have HTML because that means we can, for example, add link to pictures and do all kind of rich text editing and do pop-ups, like put scripts in it, anything that you want. Please fill in the form and give us up to 5 working days to process. Okay? Next row, I'm going to add another row, and that row I'm going to add a horizontal line and say column span 2. Next row, I'm going to add title and column span 2. Next row, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to say I'm going to need your travel date, and next to it I'm going to need your return date. Going to do another row and add to it the destination, and that's my first tab. Let me save that.
So that text cell's kind of like being able to build in a pre-edited, ready to go content web part on top of your new item form.
Exactly, it's like a content editor on whichever form it is. Notice that I have the ability to add conditions to the tab.
Yep.
And say in that condition, like show this tab to certain users, or based on values on certain columns. And we just don't have much time left, so I'm just going to skip it and show you the new design of the form. Voila. That already looks professional, right? This is and this is a regular SharePoint list. There's nothing but a regular SharePoint list, and it already looks professional. You have a tab, you have an instruction, you can add links to help in the instruction, you have a horizontal line that separates it, you can add more text wherever you want, because all you need to do is add more lines and select what's in those lines. Now,
But destination is not appearing.
sorry?
Destination is not appearing on the form.
This
Last call is destination. Last one.
yeah, destination. I must have added a rule to hide destination by mistake. Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll check that in a sec. I just want to show you. Let's do an approval tab, and in approval tab, I'm going to say I only want one column. I'm going to add some locations, and I'm saying, okay, approval manager, and what was it? Travel booked. Maybe. We'll just get rid of them. And you know what? I just realized I forgot in the first tab.
Put in culinary products.
Yeah. So I'll add another row. Do you have any culinary requirements? And next to it, the culinary requirements.
But the rule you already stated is still going to apply inside those tabs, right?
Yes. So all the rules that we have created in the rules section in Dynamically Show, they apply within the tabs. We can add rules to each tab. So we can say when to show and hide each tab. Ooh. So I must have stuffed something up early here. Something is happening with that
No, the
destination.
will hide. That's why just next one.
I did add a rule for destination on
It's hide.
on title, right? So if title is empty,
Of course.
yeah.
Yes.
So I stuffed up my own presentation. Okay, so that's better. Of course, there's a slight mix-up here with things. If I want to correct all of that, it's very easy. I go back to my form settings. So again, I'm pretending to be a business user. I just go, okay, where did I set that rule about the title? That was just me testing things out. I go to the same place, and I look here and say, hide destination when title is empty. Click on the delete. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, destination is shown by default even if the title is empty. Okay. Okay, so that was that. We are slowly running out of time. So, but we just got to the more advanced section that was basically a bonus if we have time for it. But I just want to show you quickly other things that that are really going to make your forms magical. Field constraints. So that's advanced validation. So that's where you can say, okay, let's add a constraint to this field. And it's not simply required or not required. We can say approving manager, there has to be a rule, operator is not empty. So you can say validate approving manager is not empty. If not valid, show approving manager is a required field. So it automatically populates that, but I can change the error message. Also, I can add conditions. I can say, let's, instead of approving manager, that was a poor example, I'll do culinary requirements. I don't want to save. Culinary requirements, new rule, is empty. Sorry, is not empty. I don't want it to be empty, I want it to be a required field, but only on the condition that do you have culinary requirements is equal to yes. So, and you can see here that I can chain more conditions, and also if I wanted a new condition, for example, if we know that the flight from Canberra to Sydney, or rather we have a policy that if you fly to Sydney, you don't get meals. So we don't need to ask culinary requirements if you fly to Sydney. So yes, we can hide the whole thing. That's what I would do. But also, the reason I'm using this scenario, I'm saying, okay, and destination current value is equal to, notice that it's actually showing me the possible values. That's why I wanted it as a choice field instead of text, to show you that the tool actually shows you and allows you allows the business users very quickly, very easily to know, okay, what are the values that are valid here that I can choose from. Okay, I'm going to remove that and click save. So if I select some dates, by the way, in advanced field validation, we can also do comparisons, as you probably saw, and I'll show you some of the advanced comparisons. But I want to show you this. It allowed me to save, but it won't allow me to save if I do this. And it actually shows me at the top, this field returned this message, a message that I can customize. Remember? We saw that. And it then goes to that field and tells me under that field. Why do we have that at the top? Because we have tabs. That means if there's something wrong in one tab, that tab will be highlighted, there's something wrong here. So the user knows which tab they should switch to correct the problem. Plus, it tells you here a validation summary of all the fields that are wrong. So already the validation experience for the user is much, much better than it is by default for SharePoint.
That's surprisingly powerful too, because a number of times I've had users close a form where they didn't notice the red asterisk against a required field.
Exactly.
They didn't notice the message. They just closed it and lost a form's worth of editing.
Yep. Yep, exactly. That's exactly it. So that was field constraints, and I also want to show you something that you asked me before, and let's see if I can give you a good answer, a quick answer. Default values. So default values enable us to set default values on fields, again based on conditions, based on rules. So I can say, I want I want destination and a rule, and the default value will be Sydney if the current user is in travel team. So obviously, if you have people from a certain group who always travel to the same place, it's very easy to create them different defaults to different people. And we can add more conditions, and you can see right now it's only based on current user, but there are other things that you can apply. If I say approving manager, for example, you can choose who the person is. It's already a choice from an email address, and again, content type or current user are the conditions.
So in the default values for a text field, what are the options in the? So obviously that column's not much use because it's a person, but if you had a title, what would the default values?
So here it's just free text.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. If you do have ideas of how this is going to be improved, Quizcom, in my experience, have been very, very responsive to adding stuff to their plans for the next one. So I just remembered the thing that I wanted to show you on fill constraints. That's extremely powerful, and I think you're going to very much like. And with that, we are going to finish the presentation. I can't. No. Okay. I should have done this. I should have done a field that we can actually really utilize it, but I'm just going to show you on title field because it's already there. So you saw the operators for the fill constraint. It has all the normal one. Okay, when you have a text field, okay, equal to, not equal to, contains, begins with, is greater, is less, greater or equal, does not contain, length is less. So all kind of things that will be very, very handy for you to constrain fields on. However, there's one magical one, matches pattern. And that allows you to say it has to match a date pattern. So a text, free text that the user enters must match a specific date pattern, or maybe a decimal number, maybe a document file name that you're asking, maybe an email. So it must be a valid email address, maybe a valid IP address, or HTML color code, or maybe it has to be multi-line, or it has to be a multimedia file name, a postal code. This is Canadian pattern for postal code. This is Canadian or American pattern for phone number. You don't have what you want, for example, Australian phone number, nothing easier. Go to pattern list, and you get an editor here of Australian phone number, and you put the regular expression that you can just Google and find the regular expression, and you can even test it on the fly. And when you save it, it gets added to the regular expression library, and that means it will be available next time you do a condition everywhere on your site. So, and you just add those, and you can get rid of the ones you don't want, for example, Canadian phone number and Canadian postcode. And this is how they did, for example, URL. It has to start with HTTPS or FTP or www. So HTTP or HTTPS, and then it needs a dot, then it needs some text, then it has to have .com or blah, blah, blah. You can actually do very, very advanced validation here, including phone numbers and emails and everything. The user still gets presented with the same regular SharePoint single line text or multi-line text or whatever field you put in, but you actually get to validate it. So I really wanted to show you that because I think that's one of the coolest things this product does. Of course, that's a bit less for business users to manage the regular expressions, but I see you as the advanced users who go and test the regular expressions, put them in the library, and then tell users, you just go matches pattern and you choose Australian phone number. There's nothing more they need to know. Okay, before we close, I'm just, without demoing, I'm just going to talk about the stuff that, that is available in the more advanced versions. View permissions, so we can tell a list that has multiple views. We can select for each view who should be able to access that view. Form quick navigation, that means if I'm looking at one form, so one travel request, I'll have a next and back button, and clicking next back button will show me the next item in the list or in the view that I'm currently looking, or there's a lot of settings that you can do it. So that can save time. Repeating rows. So this is something that was asked about the expenses. We can add repeating rows here and say, let's create a repeating row for expenses. These are the things that we ask users, and it actually shows me a list within a list where I can add more and more expenses very quickly, very easily. Like I'm very tempted to show you that, even though we're running out of time. Cascading lookup is exactly what you see in the icon, the region, country, city. You basically say, I'm going to create lookups to other lists. I look up to the country, to the region list, to the country list, to the city list. Then I'm going to connect all of them, so that the connection between those lists is actually reflected in my drop-downs. Okay, here's the repeating rows, and I can say, okay, I want to create a new column, or I can convert an existing one to a repeating. Sorry, if I already have one, I can change the settings. I call it expenses. How many rows should it have by default for new items? Let's make it 3. Allow users to add row yes, and I can change the text. Add expense item. Select a target list, and I can tell it where to save the expenses. So this is something that I probably should create in advance. Basically, a list with information about expenses. Let's see. Is there something I can use here? Not really.
The bookings?
No, because that's something else. I think, you know what? I'll just do orders, and I'll say, okay, which columns to show? I'll show customer, and I'll show product and quantity. Okay, and here's a preview of how it would look. It would look to the user inside my form. Put in a customer, put in a product, put in a quantity.
Sum the expense.
Yeah, and sum the expense, and they'll have an add link. That easy.
So yeah, it's essentially doing internal lookup for adding expenses to your travel form and storing those expenses in the child list.
Yeah, it's all stored in another list.
Yeah.
As I said, 100% SharePoint native. You uninstall it, still have in that remote list, you still have all the information saying this relates to travel request number 15. Yeah. But as long as you have it, you will open number 15, and you'll see here a list of all those items. And it's extremely powerful tool. It actually has also the option in the lookup, for example, to do the same thing in reverse, where so the example that we always give is we have a list of sales, and in every sale there can be multiple products, so you select multiple products. But then we can say create a reverse lookup in the products, so when you open the product, it shows you a list. These are all the sales that have selected you. So you can actually build a very, very, very powerful system here. And this time I'm going to say finally for the final time, we do have the option to add custom actions, which are the buttons that on pressing, it's very easy to configure a button and what the button does. Activities, which are like mini workflows. So basically, you configure activities, so things to do with the item, and then you can configure a custom action that use the activities. And it's a bit more complex, but we can get to it if any one of you want a personal one-on-one presentation. And lastly, import-export settings, which allows you to take it to another list or back up your settings or anything.
So you could have another list created with just the default title field ready to go, and just import the settings there. Would it build all the fields? All the columns? Yep.
As long as the column names are the same, it's going to apply.
It's not going to create the column names. You have to create the column names yourself.
Yeah. So the easiest thing is to save your list as a template, create it again. Yeah. So yeah, that was who said you have to be a power user to create dynamic forms. We really consider it that easy. If a user knows how to create SharePoint forms, they know very easily after a presentation like this how to create dynamic forms. Any questions? Just before we go, call for speakers. If you do have something in your environment that you want to show off, and or even ask for assistance, do a presentation. This is the problem that we face, and we'll have a discussion. You get the benefit of free consulting from myself or whoever else comes to that presentation. That's the kind of meetings that we want to have. If you do have an idea of something like that, just shoot me an email, ishai@dxd.com.au, and we'll do that. If you're a member of a company, a vendor, and your company wants to do a presentation like this, talk to me about being a sponsor of the user group. As usual, thank you to our existing sponsors, Excelgent Design, who represents Quizcom, for sponsoring our pizza and those door prizes. And thank you for Microsoft for staying here so late and for giving us the use of this wonderful facility. That's it for October 2017. See you next month. Thank you.